Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of Crush Cravings Before Diabetes Crushes You. So we have a lot to talk about today. It's a topic that I'm starting to learn a little bit more about. It's our episode is called Unpacking the Dopamine-Sugar Connection. And if you've ever wondered why you can't pass up that extra cookie or walk past the candy dish when you're in your office or whatever it is that gets your attention, this may give you a little bit of clarity around that. So let's begin. Now, what we're going to do, we're going to look at sugar cravings specifically, but through the lens of the dopamine connection. And dopamine, if you don't know, is the neurotransmitter in your brain it's the feel-good transmitter. It is triggered when you do something pleasurable. It's your reward system for when you are doing something that you like. It's part of our survival, because if there's certain behaviors that if we didn't find them pleasurable and didn't do them, the species would die out, like eating, like sex, like other behaviors that are positive. They're not hedonistic necessarily. They're positive, but they provide longevity, or they provide life, continuation of life. So, excuse me. So we're going to talk about how sugar specifically can hijack your brain's reward system. And again, why it's so hard to say no to that extra cookie. And if this is helpful to you if you struggle with sugar cravings, or if you just want to know more about how your brain kind of interacts with the rest of your body. So let's talk about this. So dopamine, as I said, is a neurotransmitter, that's a messenger in your brain. It's a chemical messenger in your brain, and that transmits the signals that are developed in your brain to the rest of your body, to other parts of your brain and the rest of your body. It involves a number of different processes in your body, but specifically we're going to talk about how it helps to regulate your mood and your emotional response, which contributes to your choices of food when they're not so necessarily beneficial to you. And also involved in your decision-making and your impulse control. Again, it has to do with, you see the cookie, pick it up, you eat it before you even think about it. And this is all part of your reward system, your dopamine response. So it is produced in several areas of the brain, and it travels to other areas and influences a number of different behaviors. And the reward system is this is a structure in your brain. It's responsible for incentivizing you. So what it does is you do something that's pleasurable. Your body reacts saying, "Oh, that was good. Oh, that cookie tasted good." It starts that dopamine response where you have gotten the reward. The reward is that feeling of euphoria, for lack of a better word, that you receive when you participate in that behavior. In this case, eating the cookie. So you associate eating the cookie with a pleasurable response, so that and then that kind of triggers more dopamine, and this becomes cyclical, where you eat the cookie, you get the response, you say, "Oh, I like that response, let me do that again." That's what your brain is doing. So you eat another cookie, you get the same response, but not quite at quite the intensity of the first response. And then you do it over and over again, and the response gets lower and lower. And so it takes more and more to get you to where you were the first time. So there's never, just like when you get high, or when you, the first time you have sex, the first time you participate in a pleasurable behavior, when you go back and try to recreate that pleasure, it's never quite the same. You can never repeat the first time. So once the genie is out of the bottle, it's not repeatable. But we keep trying to get there. So when we eat the cookie, we trigger that dopamine response. We activate the system that releases the dopamine, and it creates this feeling of pleasure and satisfaction and happiness. And again, we just go and we try to recreate that over and over again. So dopamine is also considered a motivation molecule, and it drives us to seek rewards. So once we feel that dopamine response, we want to feel it again. And so we're constantly going after ways to do that, which becomes an addiction, actually, a dopamine addiction. So this works in two ways. We have the anticipatory response, which means that when you see the cookie, even before you eat the cookie, you see the cookie, then the dopamine levels go up just because you know that if you've had the experience of eating the cookie and the cookie has given you pleasure, you take the cookie, you see the cookie, it starts the increase of your dopamine, and it motivates you to take action to eat the cookie in this case. So that way you achieve the reward. So you anticipate the reward when you see the cookie, you eat the cookie, and then you finally get to the reward. And then what happens is once you receive the reward, the dopamine helps you to sort of solidify the connection between eating the cookie and the reward, the feeling of pleasure and satisfaction. And that's what makes you want to do it again and try to recreate, recreate or sort of reinvigorate that response, that pleasure feeling. So dopamine isn't directly responsible for you feeling pleasure. It's what it does is it triggers the opioids in your brain to give you the pleasure response. I'm not sorry. It's like opioids in your brain. There are no opioids in your brain unless you put them there. But it does play a crucial role in the anticipation of the pleasure and the motivation to seek it out. So that means that once you trigger your dopamine, you're looking for that reward. You anticipate it, you see the source of that reward, you participate in that behavior, you get the reward. So that solidifies your relationship with that particular reward providing behavior. So in addiction, which is what we're talking about here, sugar addiction, dopamine has a very significant role. It is actually what happens is when you use addictive substances, like in this case sugar, what that does is it can trigger an unnaturally high surge of dopamine in your brain. And that causes you to have intense pleasure. And clearly it's going to motivate you to repeat the behavior. So over time, the brain adapts to these high levels of dopamine by producing less of it. So that's what I was saying. When you go for the second cookie, it's not quite as pleasurable as the first cookie because you've downregulated your dopamine response, because your body has to get back into equilibrium. So when you surge your dopamine, now you're at disequilibrium. And so what your body wants to do is it wants to rebalance. So what it does is the next time you eat the cookie, you don't have quite as strong a dopamine response because it does not want you to go off on the deep end. It wants you to kind of stay balanced. So what happens in order for you to achieve that high that you received the first time you ate the cookie is you have to eat more and more of them to continue that build of dopamine. And so you become tolerant. You become more tolerant of the substance that you are seeking the reward from. Again, in this case, sugar. So it takes more and more of it in order for you to get the same response. And then you become dependent, because when you are constantly seeking that dopamine high, that feeling of nirvana, of elation, or that just feeling of being rewarded, you become addicted to that feeling. And so that requires you to go out and get more and more and more. And that's the same with drugs. It's the same with sex addicts. It's the same with gambling addicts. That dopamine hit that you get every time you participate in that behavior is your addiction. So when you don't have access to that particular substance or that behavior, you can actually go through withdrawal. And that's with any of these things. You can go through a physical, emotional, psychological withdrawal. And it is quite significant. It can be. I know that when I gave up sugar, it was quite significant. I went through about 3 days of not being very comfortable and not feeling very good about, just physically not feeling well. I was a little disoriented. I was a little off my game. But once I got through that, the clarity was way better than what I had had before. So when you go through those withdrawal symptoms, if you can just kind of power through, the other side of it is sunshine and butterflies, believe me. But what happens is when you are motivated by the dopamine high that you get, it leads you to intense cravings, because what you want this dopamine hit And so what's going to happen, your body's response to that is to have you crave what it is that gives you that dopamine hit. And so the drug, the drug of choice in this case is sugar. The drug-seeking behavior just kind of becomes a central focus in your life. So we'll talk a little bit about sugar addiction. And sugar addiction is much like, and I would say it's probably more difficult to overcome than some other behaviors. Drug addiction, alcohol addiction. Your body does not need recreational drugs to live. It doesn't need alcohol to live, but it needs food to live, and it actually needs sugar, glucose to live. Every cell in your body functions on glucose. So you do have to provide it with the right sources of glucose. So the food system that we currently have in our society is not supporting us in our efforts to be healthy. If you are eating the standard American diet, it is very difficult to stay away from refined sugar and the addictive substances in that standard American diet. It's when you change your habits and your food choices and identify the foods that are going to give you the proper amount of glucose or convert to the proper amount of glucose for your body's needs and your brain's needs. That's when you're going to know that you can overcome the sugar cravings. So, why is it that that sugar exists in the first place, or that we have these feelings of euphoria or the dopamine high that we get from sugar, besides the fact that it jacks your blood sugar? But evolutionarily, in our evolution over many thousands of years, sugar has been a source of quick energy, of high calorie density, and it was also a signal that what we were eating was safe to eat. So in the days of feast and famine, where either the food was plentiful or it was scarce, you had to eat when the food was available. And it became clear that you could build up your reserves, you fatten yourself up essentially, with food that contained a lot of sugar. Not only did it provide you with reserves, but it also gave you quick energy.
Let's go way on, way back when. I didn't even know you couldn't have been too much more than 10. I ain't no psychiatrist, I ain't no doctor with degrees, but it don't take too much time to see what you're doing to me. You better think about what you're trying to do to me, yeah. Think, let your mind go, let yourself be free. Oh, freedom, 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 oh, freedom, yeah, freedom, now freedom, 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 oh, freedom. Hey, think about it, think about it. Ain't nothing new, but I'm tackling to do what I want. But I was gonna change that.
And so when you needed quick energy, either you hadn't eaten in a while or you needed to just build up your strength a little bit because you needed to go out and hunt and forage, then something sweet was going to help you do that. And as man developed, humans developed, it became clear over trial and error, probably a pretty sad trial and error, but it became clear what was edible and what was not. And one of the identifiers for something that was edible was the fact that it was sweet, because if something was sour or bitter, those were likely those identified as being something that was not necessarily beneficial for you and could actually kill you. So when it tasted sweet, then it was probably safe to eat. So 10,000 years ago, sugar was also pretty rare in the dietary choices among human beings. So it's usually found in ripe fruit. In nature, it's found in ripe fruit and honey. And if if those things were not available, fruit is very seasonal and honey is very seasonal. Those things weren't available in the wintertime, then they were only available in short periods of time during the growing season. So when they were found, they were pretty valuable. Those foods were valuable, but they were not consistently available. So the sugar sources were not consistently available. So it was good. Again, it gave you a quick energy. You were able to run away from the tiger. You were able to build up your energy to go out and hunt and forage. You could, when you needed a hit of quick energy, eat something that was sweet if it was available to you. It was also very seasonal. Like you couldn't eat fruit all year long like we can. We go to the grocery store and get strawberries in December. Well, strawberries are not December fruit. So at least in this part of the country. Excuse me, it was. You ate with the seasons. You had no choice but to eat what was available when it was available, and that's the way our bodies kind of evolved. If we ate with the seasons, we ate seasonally. We ate food that was available in our immediate environment. That's what we adapted to. So, some of the other benefits of having sugar available to you is that when you were trying to find your way in the world. And we didn't have the internet then, it helped to boost your cognitive benefit, or your cognitive qualities. So you were able to, your brain would function at a higher level, and you were able to assess your environment and kind of make decisions on how to survive in that particular environment at any given time. And so it helps you with your quick thinking and your problem solving. So sugar does give you that boost. That's why when you have this afternoon slump and you eat something sugary, you temporarily get a hit of dopamine or a boost of glucose in your brain, and you get a little bit of a short-term cognitive boost, but then it ends up crashing because your blood sugar quickly crashes, and then you have to, in order for that to continue, you have to eat another cookie or whatever it is. So that cycle is pretty dangerous and not very beneficial because eventually it doesn't work. When you eat the sugar again, your reward system is activated. The ripeness of this fruit, if in those days, the ripeness of the fruit would be an indicator of how much sugar was in it. It still is, because the less ripe it is, the less sugar is involved, is present in the fruit. So in those days, the riper the fruit, the more nutrient dense it was, and the more calorically dense it was for the person that was eating it. And so it helped keep them nourished and functioning in the moment. When they ate the fruits that were available to them in their environment. So one of the downfalls, one of the downfalls of consuming sugar is that we have no upper intake limit. That means that when you eat too much meat, you kind of feel like you've got this big lump of meat in your belly, and there is a point at which after which you can no longer consume meat. You've reached your satisfaction level or beyond, and it makes you feel ill if you continue to eat it. However, we don't have that strong that strong red light for consuming sugar. And because our bodies have not evolved in 10,000 years, and because back in those days sugar was not readily available, and you didn't really need that sort of cutoff, that upper intake limit, because there wasn't that much that was available, so you probably would not overconsume it. But now that isn't the case. We do have plenty of sugar to consume, and because we don't have that upper intake limit, we consume copious amounts of sugar. And the more we do, the more we want, the more we want, the more we do, and it just becomes this horrible cycle, and ends up causing all kinds of issues. So, well, our bodies and our brains are still wired to crave and to overconsume sugar, because it was a delicacy back in the day, and it was something that was beneficial in the moment. But now, because it's so prevalent, it is no longer beneficial. Now it is detrimental to our health. So, there is a lot of controversy around whether sugar addiction is a real addiction. Well, I'm here to tell you that it absolutely is. Sugar when you consume sugar, you light up the same parts of your brain that would light up if you were consuming or using heroin or any type of opioid or cocaine, any type of I don't know what that is. I guess like not amphetamine, but upper. Anything that's gonna ramp up your behavior. But the same way that eating sugar or eating that extra cookie will trigger a dopamine response, so do those drugs. And again, every time you try to replicate that first experience, you can't. And you keep trying, and you take more and more and more, and your dopamine response downregulates. And so then you require more to get the same dopamine response, and it just becomes this horrible cycle. So, what does all this mean? Well, because of the response in your body and your brain of the eating the sugar, triggering the dopamine response, increasing your blood sugar levels, all of these things become an addictive kind of feeling. You want that feeling over and over again. And even though you get that feeling, it doesn't last very long. And you expect it. You want to keep that feeling of euphoria alive. So you get that instant mood boost, but then what happens is you don't maintain it, so you have to keep going back for more. You get an increase in your energy, again, is not maintainable. You have to keep going back for more. And your cognitive function may be short-lived. If you even, at some point, eating too much sugar has the opposite effect. You go into like a sugar coma almost. But, it is the temporary impact in the beginning is, it's quite nice, actually. But it doesn't last. And you're constantly trying to get to that point again. But people use it also for stress reduction. But long-term, it's not. It's not really a stress reducer because it causes inflammation in your body, causes all kinds of reactions in your body that actually increase your stress level. But psychologically, people go for that cookie because they're having a bad day, having a bad moment, having a bad whatever situation. It is, but it is, again, another temporary fix because doing that is just going to cause more stress in your body. Anyway. So what happens is, everything increases for about 5 minutes or maybe a little bit longer, but, everything, your blood sugar, your dopamine, everything increases, but then what goes up must come down. So it crashes, and then you end up having the hangry feeling, the irritability, the fatigue, and again, cravings for more because you want to get rid of that nasty feeling. So the only thing that you think you can do to get rid of that is to take more sugar in. So, what happens is when you consume too much sugar, or you consume sugar, period, you can increase your dopamine levels by 130 to 200%. So, doubling your dopamine level from equilibrium when you eat sugar. That's pretty significant because what happens is, as I said before, your body will downregulate your dopamine, so that's going to require you to consume more of whatever the product is or whatever the substance is that you use to get your dopamine levels up. And when you do that, it's just your dopamine receptors become less sensitive. Your body is, as I said, your brain is trying to maintain homeostasis, equilibrium. So it requires more and more of the same substance, and what happens is you become tolerant, you become dependent, you go through withdrawal if you don't get the substance that you're looking for, and that's really why the sugar addiction it erodes your health over time because you have to consume more and more of it, and increases your risk of developing chronic illness, obesity, diabetes. High cholesterol actually is often caused by consuming too much sugar. High LDLs, high triglycerides are impacted by consuming too much sugar. Because what happens is the sugar inflames your entire body, including your cardiovascular system. Your body's response to that is to send plaque to the arteries. And so the sticky gooey stuff, the bad stuff, is exacerbated by eating too much sugar. So when we use sugar as our go-to substance for emotions that we don't want to feel, for situations, uncomfortable situations we find ourselves in, for our own reward, or maybe getting back at someone, that's part of emotion, I guess, for anything that is going on in our lives, what we're doing is we're avoiding what's actually happening, and we're not really getting to the root of why we're asking for that sugar in the first place. So as uncomfortable as it is, it's sometimes better, not sometimes, it is better to face down what's causing you to want to essentially participate in a self-destructive behavior, but also to, why is it that you need that extra cookie? Why is it, other than it looks good? I mean, people who don't have these particular addictions can walk by the extra cookie because it doesn't really give them the pleasure that it gives somebody who is highly dopamine dependent, because we become addicted to dopamine. Is what happens is, so in our society now, there's a lot of dopamine addiction. That's why it's such a hot button topic that is fed by using video games, social media, things that give you quick hits of feeling good. And we become addicted to that, and we have to do it more and more and more to keep that up. So dopamine addiction has been quite the hot topic lately. And I'm going to be learning more about this, so I'm going to be talking more about it in a little bit more cohesive and just a little bit more, better presented than what I did here, because I feel like I had a lot of information here that I wanted to share, but I didn't, I don't think I did everything terribly clearly. So with that being said, I am Karen Sammer. I am a board-certified health and wellness coach, and my specialty is to help people to overcome their sugar addiction and their cravings so that they can lose weight and avoid diabetes. And if you feel that you are in that condition, whether or not you have diabetes or you have been told that you are pre-diabetic, if you are addicted to sugar and you find it very difficult to walk away from, give me a call, because I offer a free consultation. Go to my website, yourpoweryourhealth.com/book, and schedule yourself a free consultation. And then we will talk about where you are, what's going on in your life, where you'd like to be. Are you addicted to sugar? You'd like to not be addicted to sugar? Great, let's talk about that. And you'll get some action steps to go and start off on your healthy habits. And if you choose to work with me, then that's great. If not, at least you'll have some action steps to take away from the meeting, and it will get you started on your healthy path. So have a great day and walk away from that cookie.